All right, welcome everyone. We have a lot of guests from both USC and outside of USC today. And we're very fortunate to have Ajay's parents visit us in the audience as well. So
right.
Everybody please give a round of applause for them. Ajay with us. So for new members, new audiences to Blockchain USC, Blockchain USC is the go-to blockchain ecosystem at USC. We host a lot of speakers events like this one, where we invite the brightest minds within the Web3 space to campus and then share their knowledge with us. These are the biggest thinkers that we know, and we hope to bring value to everyone here. Recently, we also recruited a research team. We actually got 26 members for that. And this research team is working on different topics across Web3, including Metaverse, GameFi, NFTs, DeFi, of course, and so on and so on. So we're extremely excited about that. Here's our co-president, Jeff. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi all, I'm Jeff. Glad to see you all here. I mean, Richard did a fantastic job at introducing us. So we're happy that you're here, and we're excited to host three fantastic speakers from Consensys, Benefits DAO, and also Hibiscus.tech. And let's give a round of applause for our guests.
My name is Richard. I am the Director of External Relations at Blockchain USC. Currently, I'm an intern at Dragonfly Capital, which is a Web3 fund headquartered across the world, basically. And here we're now going to start introducing each of our guests in more detail, so everybody can get a background of what they do. So sitting here is Ajay. Ajay is a Senior Strategist at Consensys. From developer tools to enterprise solutions, Consensys is building Ethereum blockchain infrastructure and applications for new economic systems. The Consensys product suite, composed of MetaMask, Infura, Quorum, Truffle, Codefi, and Diligence, serves millions of users, supports billions of blockchain-based queries for their clients, and has handled billions of dollars in digital assets. At Consensys, Ajay has a focus on cryptoeconomics, treasury portfolio strategy, and token engineering. In addition to his role at Consensys, Ajay serves as a Treasury Lead for Friends of Benefits DAO. Previously, Ajay was an investment product manager at Capital Group, a global investment manager with over $2 trillion in assets under management. At Capital Group, Ajay designed and launched investment strategies for a variety of clients. Earlier in his career, he built an emerging market private equity fund focused on investment opportunities across Africa.
And next we have Raihan. Raihan is the founding member of Friends of Benefits DAO, a DAO featured in Wall Street Journal, Time, Resident Advisor, and Financial Times. Friends with Benefits DAO is a group of cultural creators and maintainers using Web3 tools to build community and foster creative agency. Raihan is a digital strategist who has been connecting artists to the newest advances in technology. His current focuses are in the music NFT platform Catalog and the Web3 culture community Friends with Benefits DAO. In the past professional roles, he has led digital strategy for global companies and completed his MBA from USC. So fight on.
And Jeremy over there is a Canadian fashion designer and creative director. He worked with brands such as Nike, Adidas, Louis Vuitton. Jeremy co-founded Hibiscus.tech, which is building open source blockchain-based tools to empower product design and creation in multiplayer mode using community-owned infrastructure, immutable profit distribution, and on-chain provenance. He is building an alternative system to prevent corporations from exploiting creators' intellectual property. So let's give a round of applause for our Well, how this event is going to work is that each of our amazing guests is going to give their own presentation in the beginning. After these three presentations, we will have some moderator questions prepared for our guests. And after the moderator questions, we're going to open up the floor, and anybody in the audience is welcome to ask any questions, including our friends online. So if you have a question online, feel free to drop in the Zoom link or just raise your hand and we can all hear you on the Zoom. So let's get started.
Cool. Thank you guys, and thanks so much for coming out. I think the other thing I just want to say is that this is an intimate crowd, so we'll make it interactive. And I'm really excited. I'm honored to share the stage with these two. I think they're both very incredible human beings. And what they're doing is really unique and different than, I think each person just takes a different approach. And that's what we were hoping to show tonight, is that there's not one approach to this world and this economy and this re-architecture of the internet that we're finding. So hopefully you can kind of see that tonight of different approaches. All right, let's get going. Slide number 1. All right, so I'm gonna go, who is Consensys? What is cryptoeconomics? Institutional portfolio management in crypto, and then a little bit of life alpha, which you guys you can drop if you want. So what Consensys is so our founder at Consensys helped create Ethereum. He was one of the early devs with Vitalik, who helped start the Ethereum protocol. And the way I think about, like, you think about it, is that we all have smartphones in our pockets. And I think that, like, the realization for Joe was that, okay, we've basically created this smart contract, this immutable ledger, this system that can be completely decentralized, and it's sort of like a smartphone of sorts. It has so many different use cases that we don't know and we haven't even thought of that will exist. Just like when the smartphone was created, you didn't know you could be checking, be able to take taxis and birds and Facebook and all these things that we didn't know. And I'm sure Steve Jobs, when he invented the iPhone, didn't know that this was going to exist. So the reason why Joe created Consensys, he said, you can build the iPhone, and this is kind of that network effect, is that it doesn't mean anything. It's not going to have any value unless people come and build things on it. Like there's no, and then the people that build things, the users are going to come use the things that they build. So it's like a city. And that's the genesis of what Consensys is that we help builders build. So builders are developers. And that's things like Infura, Truffle. There's all sorts of things like APIs, SDKs. We help run nodes. We help basically create the infrastructure, the city level, the roads, the bridges, those things for people to create things on the blockchain. Originally, it was Ethereum focused because Ethereum is extremely composable, but we are increasingly moving to other chains. And then users, how many in this room have MetaMask? Here we go. All right, we got a pretty strong MetaMask. So MetaMask is our big user product, and that's helping users use, like help you navigate to different things that people build, whether it's Uniswap or whether it's some weird yield farm that you're gone into some weird degen pool on. And it's hard. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, and it's a lot of composability and things like that. So don't come to me with your MetaMask problem. I'll be the first to say that. All right, I would just say that to sum up what I said, Consensys helps users and developers access the internet of value. So I think, like, remember to think about it that way. It's like the internet. Web 1 was like actually just the web. I don't know what other themes there were there. Web 2 is really the social internet, and then it was like information and things like that. I think Web 1 was information. Web 2 is social. Who has got Facebook everywhere? Van's all about Facebook. I know you. He's a power user, and it's a way to be social and all that. Well, now Web 3 is value. So I think that'll be a common theme that you'll see in all of our conversations. All right, next slide. So cryptoeconomics, this is a word that sounds made up because it is made up and it's recent. And I kind of laugh at the times when I say, so I brought my parents here because they were like, what the hell is cryptoeconomics? You're not like laundering money or something. No. So what it is, yeah, oh yeah, sorry. So we do 3 things. So token engineering, a token is like I think of it, and I'm going to kind of go different layers of understanding because I don't know how much you guys understand, but I think of it as a token as a composable piece of, it could be equity, it could be, think of it as a composable stock. It's a stock you can do whatever you want with. You can blow it up in 6 months. You can create all sorts of mechanisms with it. You can do like interest with it. You can just do unlimited amount of things in a composable way. With stocks, it's like, okay, well, you can just do one thing. You got to go to Schwab. It's very, very centralized, and it's very, very. It's like just like a box. There's nothing else you can do with it. And so what we do is we do research. And by the way, down here, which I can send around afterwards, if you do want alpha, we do a lot of research on a month or a weekly basis, which is really good. We do modeling, simulation. So we basically do a lot of token engineering projects for internal stuff and then external. And that's I would say, if you're interested in career stuff, like this is a really interesting field, and there's not enough talented people. And I think there's going to be this field is going to burst in the next few years. Investment strategy. This is where I spend most of my time. This is revenue modeling, macroeconomic frameworks, treasury management, just managing a pool of money that a business holds. And then the last thing is Web3 participation. So we do a lot of work in the community. We work in a lot of DAOs, and we again, with that same ethos of helping builders build and users use, we take that out as a team into the community. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit of a joke, but I don't know if you guys know this meme, but the idea is that nobody cares about your personal portfolio. So this could be employers, crypto funds, the world, friends, partners, Uber drivers, neighbors. The point being is, how many of you all own a token, have a MetaMask, and have a portfolio? Okay, so there's one. I mean, come on, we've got a big strong, okay, mom's got one too. We've got a strong showing. And I'll get into this a little bit with the Life Alpha, but the thing about crypto, which is a little challenging, is that that's your entree. Your entree into this world, the glasses you put on is a portfolio that is a marked value 24/7. Who all is woken up in the middle of the night and checked a token price? Don't be shy here. There he is. Okay. Yeah. So I say this because it can be a very corrosive and mentally draining entree. And so I want to say this because there's a lot more there. And then also your success that you've had, maybe we've all like bought the right shitcoin, or you were early to Bitcoin or something like that. That doesn't always translate into a career or something like that. So what I hope is that you can kind of keep your portfolio, but like just take those shackles off and enter into this industry with more than just that. All right, so the next slide. So now I'm going to get kind of bored with you, but I think this is very interesting. So what you do, so personal portfolio aside, what I work on is a lot around how do you run money for an institution? So that's crypto native. So Consensys, as I mentioned, we have all these things that we're doing, but a lot of it is, okay, how do I actually manage these pool of assets, and this pool of assets going north of actually close to $1 billion. But what are our goals of it? And that's, again, going back to the personal portfolio, it's actually very different, because what's your personal portfolio goals? I don't know. I want to buy some shitcoin and get rich and not have to work anymore, right? That's not the same as what an institution does. So the way we look at it is longevity. We're trying to basically make sure that this institution, this organization, can exist in perpetuity. It's like a foundation, right? USC has an endowment. It's actually very similar to an endowment. Liquidity, we need to make sure we are liquid if shit hits the fan, if we need to pay for people's salaries and things like that. The interesting thing about liquidity when you're doing institutional portfolio management is you can't pay people in stable coins. You have to pay them in fiat. So you have to think about your assets are in crypto, but your expenses and your liabilities are in fiat. So that's kind of one thing we think a lot about. Capital appreciation and income. Obviously, we want to diversify, and we do want to have a portfolio that can benefit and earn income and grow with the ecosystem. And that supplements our day-to-day business activities. And then the last thing is just ecosystem development. We want to help DAOs, other protocols, things like that. We want to be early investors. We want to help builders build things. So this is a little bit, and I'm hoping this is kind of for the business people, and maybe you're doing some portfolio stuff or statistical classes. You all know normal distributions, right? The little bell curve, we've all seen that. So what's wild about crypto, and this is the stuff that I do on a daily basis, which I put some people to sleep, is that, so VAR is value at risk, and it's a 99%. So what that means is that I can in 99% of the time, I will not lose 7.5%. So that means, let's say I have $1 million, let's say just have $100. I won't lose $7.5 in one day, okay? That's what that means. And so that's how you normally do statistical analysis. You do a bell curve, you try and figure that out and you model accordingly. In crypto, it's 13.5%. So it blows through any normal distribution, which is crazy. So you have to plan for non-normal events, which is really crazy because most things, weather, everything else fits in this kind of normal Bell distribution, and crypto blows through that. So it just makes, and again, we could go in the PA, you guys are waking up and like in the middle of the night because your mind is on these non-normal events, which is crazy. And so from a portfolio management perspective, especially for an institution, it creates different challenges.
Go ahead, Jay. But that's with like fairly kind of like aggressive investments, no?
No, this is actually run of ETH. So I mean, you could say, I don't know, so this is actually just, we consider Consensys ETH to be like the market. Like that's what, and actually going to the next one. So go to the next slide. This is super interesting because the blue line is ETH, the orange line is BTC. And so what this shows actually is this is correlations. So if I'm an asset allocator, okay, it's Bitcoin, it's Ethereum, it's the S&P 500 stocks, it's NASDAQ, it's tech stocks. These are going up and down together. They're highly, highly correlated. So a lot of crypto people that think like, oh, like, you know, what I'm doing is like not, it's all hostage to TradFi forces. And this bear market we've been finding, same with looking at Facebook stock is like, you know, a big rug. Netflix went down 75% in one day. So I say this because like the macro forces are actually very, very strong in crypto. Speaking of macro, so this is kind of how we think of actually investments and how we think about risk on, risk off in the ecosystem and with portfolio management. So we take growth, inflation, Fed policy, things like that. So traditional things that drive stocks and bonds. And we say, okay, where are we at in the market cycle? Where are we at with financial conditions? And then we bring in crypto factors that we can talk about if you guys want to get into Q&A, like factor correlations, what I just showed you, on-chain activity, like number of addresses, like new users entering the ecosystem, emissions, stake, things like that. And then regulatory stuff. And we bring that into also what's going on with NFTs, Web3, things like that. And we bring all this together and that informs our asset class and our basically weightings of how we want to do the portfolio. So you could still think of this as like, there are stocks, there's bonds, there's things with different risk profiles. And how do you create that in a portfolio that is not going to lose its complete shirt in one day and not be able to fund the institution? Because the worst thing you do is we'd screw up on because some terrible token that we invested in and the company can't pay people salaries or things like that. So this is kind of how we think about it. And then last, I don't know if you guys remember this meme again, it's the same one, but again, I would just say that like, if I like, and I actually wrote a few notes on this because I thought this was, there's a guy named, does anyone know David Foster Wallace? David Foster Wallace. Okay, David Foster Wallace wrote this thing and I wanted to read you guys. He says, this I submit is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well adjusted. You consciously get to decide what meaning is and what it isn't. You get to decide what to worship. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, you'll never have enough. You'll never feel like you have enough. This is the kind of worship you gradually slip into day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware that that's what you're doing. So again, I say that because I want you all to realize that if you're interested, or maybe you want to have a career in Web3, you're more than just the way, maybe those entry levels, maybe that was exhilarating. And frankly, there is exhilaration in owning something that's going up or that's going down and things like that. But again, I want to reiterate that I think that can be a very toxic for your mental health to enter an industry. And I want to just emphasize that it's more than that. But the number go up mentality and GMI and all that stuff, and maybe it's all financial and maybe it's all a number in a database, but it also is exciting because guess what it means? It means less money for Facebook. It means users get to own the networks they participate in. And that is really exciting. And so with that, I'll hand it over to one of you guys because you guys are gonna.
If everything is financialized also, then nothing is.
Yeah, it's a good way to accelerationist. We'd love to hear it.
All
All right, I talked for too long, so let's pass it over to you guys.
Thank you, AJ.
Thank you, AJ.
Oh man, this is so tired.
Yes,
Did you do this?
yeah.
Did you do this?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh wow, community architect, DJ, professional designer.
What
it's all
doesn't
facts.
what doesn't he do?
Doesn't sleep. Doesn't sleep and apparently doesn't eat. I'm sorry, Mom. It's like, have you had dinner? I'm like, not in 3 days. Actually, can we go back a couple slides, please? Thank you. So if AJ is really building out the infrastructure of what it is to be in the city of Web3, Friends with Benefits as a DAO really focuses on the emerging tech and the why. Obviously, you don't want to worry, you don't want to go to a city and just be like, the sewers are cool, the subway's tight. Like, no. Where do you go? The museum, the club, the art gallery, where you hang out with your friends. And that's ultimately what we do. Me and a few friends started FWB while I was sitting at Marshall, or on Zoom more accurately, and skipping class. So my lesson today is to teach you guys how to drop out. And how to do so in a way that pays the bills. No, I'm kidding. And how Web3 can actually help with that, real talk. That a lot of what we do in Web3 is useless without AJ's work, but also useless without your fellow builders and connectors. How many of you folks are, let's just say, highly technical nerds? Give me a show of hands real quick.
Highly what?
Like
High-end technical
highly
nerds.
technical nerds. All right, good. This is my crew, this is my family. I am profoundly, highly untechnical. When we built out the DAO, I wasn't the dude deep in Solidity code. I wasn't the guy who was like figuring out NFTs, all that. I'm the dude who's cutting class and reading white papers and making them translatable for folks. One thing I've always told people is a lot of the best non-technical work is basically making pop music. You're taking the craziest ideas from L2s, from DeFi, from shitcoins, and being like, hey mom, this is why it matters, you know? So when she picks up her first NFT, I'm just like, let's go, you know? Or trying to convince my favorite musical artist why music NFTs matter when they've been stuck in contracts or deals that have wrecked them financially for, you know, almost their whole life. Where should I go from here? Where do you want me to go from
What's like your everyday job in like creating
What is
the
it?
social ecosystem for FWB?
here? Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and I'd love to also just tap on just like how the growth went. Like, how do you guys start? And then like, how did that become? Because now it's like, I don't know if you guys have read the New York Times and all these things, like FWB is everywhere. Like it was on KCRW, Raihan was on KCRW a few days ago. It's like almost you've reached that virality. Then that's just like, how did you do that?
Well, and like if the token started off being worth 0, how come it's worth so much right now?
Because people think we're worth it, we're hot. Let's actually go back to my title slide real quick, because this is a fun story. Community architect, DJ, perfume designer, all of that feels very non-crypto. And I think that what I would encourage everyone to think about, how many of y'all are undergrads? Or actually, how many of y'all are grad students? Just me, okay, thank God, don't do that. A lot of our genesis for FWB started with me working in music, starting a business with my mom, where I've done fragrance stuff for about 10 or 12 years, working in basically high-end coffee and luxury goods. And each of those things really teaches you how to talk to people and meet people where they are. And our initial growth for FWB was very much, hey, I'm on Twitter. My buddy Trevor's like, if you have a MetaMask, shoot me your ETH address. I slide in his DMs, I got this. And I hop into Discord, connect my wallet, and I just see my fave DJs, a bunch of friends from Twitter, and a bunch of other folks who are like-minded idea folks. And then that was like 10 of us. And from there, the questions started to roll in. Hey, how do I do NFTs? Hey, what's an ERC20? And you know, I'm sitting in like Madame's class, like for marketing, and I'm just like zoning out. And I'm like, I'm gonna read this white paper real quick. I'm gonna figure out how Ethereum works. I'm gonna figure out how L2s work. I'm gonna figure out why a music NFT is different from a traditional record label contract. Like everything that I learned that y'all are already like aces on is stuff that I then had to combine and kind of re-strand together, like tie it back together with my past experience. So one big nugget I would give y'all in terms of growing a community is don't search for product market fit, search for community fit right off the jump. Hit the club, hit the spa, go meet people. Like the campus isn't where your ideas start and stop. This is where you find your squad. You're gonna do more better work at 3 a.m., maybe after a couple of drinks with your crew, than you will in here. Because the thing that is craziest about DAOs, and actually what was our original genesis, was you live and die by the idea. There are so many undergrads who I talk to who are like, I would love to get a high-paying corporate FANG job and like be a product manager at Facebook. And that is not what a DAO is. A DAO is very much like, I don't know if you feel this way, AJ, like you're like this every day with your ideas. Like I'm ready to freaking go. That I'm squaring up. This is why we should do radio. This is why we should go do events. This is why we should do an NFT gallery. Because when we start with DeFi primitives, the question's like, is this making us money? And guess what? No market, no money. No people, no money. So that becomes the fun question of how do we find people, not who are buyers, not who are products, but people who just rock with us. Because the people who rock with you are going back to the like 1,000 true friends or 1,000 true fans category of like the people who are obsessed with your shit. Like, how many of y'all are music folks in here? What's the biggest band that you've seen in the smallest venue? That vibe where you're just like, I was early.
I mean, AJ and I just went to Block Party way back in the day.
Where? Shit.
Palladium.
So it wasn't that small, I guess.
I mean, relatively.
Yeah,
It was cool. It was very cool.
Love Block Party.
I know.
Bring it
Throwback.
back. That's my set all Saturday.
But Raihan, one thing I'd love you to touch on is how many people know what a DAO is in this crew? Just a good amount, maybe younger people, maybe some, but like maybe give a little, oh, Dad knows what a DAO is. He's the anon in the group. Yeah,
Have you signed up already? Have we admitted you to friends with them?
yeah, he's applied his application's been. But maybe just like, I would love to just get just a little bit on what a DAO is, how does it work, like the voting.
Fundamentally, the DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, I've always phrased it as a group chat with money. The two things that a DAO does exceedingly well that a traditional corporation doesn't is coordinate people's time and energy and coordinate their capital. So y'all have probably seen projects like Juicebox or Gnosis Safes, et cetera, where people are using their on-chain activity to be like, yo, we want to go in this direction. We want to, for example, spend $1 million, our whole treasury on the Constitution. Or, we want to buy a minor league NBA team. And where does that happen? Normally, we would do that pre-Web3. We'd do it like on a message board or like a Facebook group, which is like the most boomer shit of all time. And by doing it on chain, people are forced to commit with their time, their money, their energy. And then as someone who's at the top of the org or someone who is built for the strategy side, you can see very quickly, this is a direction we should go in. You have a direction and you have power behind it. So a lot of what we do day in, day out at Friends with Benefits is both build DAO tooling that is socially minded and kind of consumer friendly. And we build cool projects to get people excited, both for ourselves and for the wider ecosystem. One of our largest things actually is a ticketing app called Gatekeeper, which started out as us being like, we have 400 people at this rave and we want to make sure everyone has tokens. How do we do that? So our product team, a couple volunteers stepped up and said, we built a QR code scanner. We found a way to tie this QR code scanner to people's Ethereum wallets. And we found a way to issue NFTs as tickets, all of that. And that became our first product, and we refined it as such that we had a party at Bitcoin Miami last year, and it was a great time. And we have since refined it for each subsequent event to the point where after the first event, we had about 20 or 30 other DAOs saying, yo, can we get access to that? Can we use that? And as a DAO ourselves, we then built that out as another benefit for our community saying, hey, if you use our stuff, we're charging you for it, but we're also giving that benefit to our members. You have to let everyone who holds FWB into the party. And that feels so different from a traditional business mindset where you're not thinking about lifetime value of your users. You're not thinking about cost of acquisition, right? You're just thinking about what's the best party and how can I share with my homies? And that is, again, I think Life Alpha Part 2, to put it in your terms.
Yep.
So a lot of what we do is to fuel the product development and to fuel kind of membership growth of cool people. A lot of that is different from, again, focusing on cost of acquisition or just strict kind of membership growth and metrics. You do this enough, at some point, Andreessen comes knocking and says, hey, do you want money? And we're like, we'll take the money. And then the conversation hasn't changed since because a lot of what a DAO does is, again, we build in public constantly. And that is the ballast against people saying, yo, what are you up to? What are you up to? It's like, hey, check out our snapshot, check out our votes, check out our Discord. We're talking about what we do every week. Even today, for example, we have a town hall, we had a couple hundred people show up on Zoom and Discord. And, they are either really nice and really excited about what we do, or they just grill us nonstop, being like, why are you spending our money this way? Because that's our money. That other than the black box of a C Corp, we are beholden to everyone, almost as like a workers co-op. This is the kind of shit that they don't teach you at Marshall, because when you say co-ops, someone who's like big finance is like, no, don't say that. So if you are starting a DAO, that is also one other thing, is leave the ego out of it, because you're not in control anymore. You're really rocking with your whole crew. And so like more specifically day in, day out, it's managing the internal DAO activities, who is happy, who's sad, who's great, kind of gardening, and then managing external activities. Like AJ said, I've done a crazy press tour this last week and a half or so, done the New Yorker, New York Times, KCRW on the radio. And basically my core message there is Web3 isn't scary, crypto isn't scary, and we're not money laundering. I have to say that. It's not all of us. Not all of us.
Yeah.
I'm not money laundering on my main wall. No. So yeah, that's a lot of my day in, day out. Love it.
I'd say too, like, Raihan got me into FWB. Like, I was holding the tokens, but I was like, I don't want to get into some Discord and talk about crypto and shit,
Let me talk about
like,
this.
crypto's whack, but I was still like into crypto and like obviously reading white papers, getting into smart contracts. But then like I see this guy and like he's tweeting about like Web3, and I'm like, oh fuck, these guys look kind of dope. So we DM and he's like, no, come through, like you'll like it, And I was like, bro, I don't know, like I don't want to talk to people about like crypto, no one's really like interesting, and no one understands like what I want to do. And he's like, just bro, like come through. And I came through and like hopped in the Discord, and like I think maybe in like 2 weeks, literally like I think I met 10 people that I'm working like full time with right now.
Actually, I think that's really important. Something I didn't mention is I spend way too much time on Twitter instead of being in class. And my first DM to Jeremy was a picture of his application to FWB and saying, I know who you are. Because, I'm a fashion geek, I'm a music geek, I'm a perfume geek, right? All of that plays into it. And I think so much of what we're doing when we're building tools for coordination is you can't go in blind. You should always find something relatively interesting about the people you're working with, working for. And then you figure out how to best support them and accelerate their growth. I would say, like, if y'all ain't friends already in here, not in FWB, but just friends with each other, you should do that.
Yeah.
Because you'll gain something very valuable that you don't get, being stuck at a computer all day.
And it's almost like community curation, like I wouldn't have been there like if he like wasn't like existing or like out there, like kind of like being like, yo, I see you, like hop into this chat, try like this chat, talk to this person. And I think that's kind of like the key of what FWB is so cool, is like you'll have like developers or TradFi people, but also like literally all the biggest art directors that work for like all the music artists are in FWB, like all the music artists, they're all in FWB and they're just chilling, and then like seeing that is like, okay, cool. There is like culture and like crypto culture being like meeting each other to FWB. So.
Yeah, I was actually an early holder of FWB tokens.
Then what happened? Why is that in the past 10?
Because my application, it got rejected.
Oh,
And then
there's no rejection. There's no
I
rejection.
got the project last April.
Yeah.
So that was probably a year ago.
$10.
And then $750.
Yeah.
And then I saw a website. I was like, this is cool, because like nobody was doing any kind of social tokens, at the
Right.
time. Because you guys were like literally the first project that started doing social tokens. I was like, this is like the perfect use case for tokens, right? Because like token gated events, you see everybody's talking about NFT projects, but like FWB is like the first one that started it, and like I'm getting the Discord, I see like all these channels set up with like cool people talking different stuff, like working on different stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like this is like community I want to like engage with. Like that's how your token increase in value, right? Because the value attract the crowd, and then like your DAO is like kind of building like a unique, like multicultural or dimensional country club almost. But I don't want to use the word country club, but it's a
we connect dots for people. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
In a way that's not extractive, that in a way it's very Web2 to be like your community is your product, right? If you're at Facebook or Twitter or whatever, it's like your daily active users are like the metric you live and die by. But for us, a token price reflects the health of the community, how people are feeling, right? If everyone woke up on the wrong side of the bed because some NFT we promoted was like falling flat on his face, like that would suck, right? And we would know very quick. I'd check Rainbow Wallet and be like, this sucks. And then how do I fix that?
And it's also about like aligned incentives, like you guys want to support projects that you think are interesting because like.
I have squad wealth on the back of my phone for a reason, because this is very much the mantra. There's this piece by a crew called Other Internet, and their whole idea of squad wealth is as people build together in a co-op fashion, their value increases together, that all of you are stronger as a unit than any of you are individually by yourselves. When we look back at the success of FWB, even though it's only been like a year and a half, none of us will say that we did it alone. We all did this together, and we all wanted to create like a safe ecosystem where people could try their craziest ideas, their most insane stuff, whether it's like our buddy Eric going from Nike saying like, hey, I want to try a generative art project that I've never done before. All right, cool. We got you. I'm going to connect you with the dev. I'm going to connect you with our squad. We're going to promote it. My buddy Chuck, who actually is creative director of the Bulls, saying, I have been able to turn down regular paid ad clients because of my NFTs. Like, that's a win for us. Or, musicians saying, hey, I can actually turn down tours and I don't need to travel to like the UK from LA to, pay rent, right? The idea of establishing this kind of creative middle class is what drives a lot of what we do day in, day out. So the whole idea, when people say like WAG me in crypto, like we're all gonna make it, that's also part of it, saying like, not everyone's gonna hit the top, but all of us are gonna like cross the gate together.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeremy.
Speaking on WAGME, it's like we're all gonna make it. It's a crypto thing that people
You
say.
didn't finish your own slide, Doc.
I know, I was like, what else should I put? And then I'm going to gas myself up. That's it. Yeah, like fashion designer, sportswear. I worked and work for like some of the biggest giant sportswear brands in the world, music artists. It's fun, it's nice, it's like amazing, like living the dream. Like I think 15 years ago, I was like, oh, I want to work for like my favorite rapper, like Nike, Arc'teryx, and like, I've been doing this for the past like decade now. So it's cool, but it's impossible for me to like really like own my work, forever. Everything I do, I just donate it to like these giant mega corporations that like make millions of dollars on my work, which is great, like the stuff that I make is super successful. But then I was just asking myself these questions, and then I just discovered like crypto and fell in like deep, was reading like white papers every day. I'm like, this is it, like there's no other way. And kind of like in relationship to what he was saying, like WAG me, like we're all gonna make it. We're not all gonna, and like thank you. Let's go. We're not all gonna make it. And I was like, oh, like I wanna make it, like I wanna be able to own my work. And like I want like my favorite photographer, my favorite like artist to be able to like make money. Like I see the worth, but like maybe he just gets like a really bad deal with like this company and he's not able to pay rent, but he's like the best artist of all time. So I'm building Hibiscus DAO, basically a tool set for composable design, people to use blockchain to create real product without any necessarily like physical or like digital relationship to the blockchain. Everything that's digital, like I'm a fashion designer, so like patterns, textile prints, graphics, it's all going to be on chain. You're going to own it. And then through primary market sales, just redistribution of profit through all participants so that the participants can own the means of production in like proportion to their work. Next slide. Yeah, blockchain powered creator economy with multiplayer mode. I think crypto right now is really stuck into like, I mean, not stuck, I guess it's like the natural evolution, but it's like single player. This artist gets royalties from this work, but as a fashion designer, like fashion is a highly collective like practice, like you work with 10 to 15 to 20 people on just one product. So I'm like, okay, cool. How can we like step this up and like make it way more like multiplayer and like inclusive? So basically the basic ethos, next slide, is NFTs as utility for provenance and ownership. That's like level 99 concept, but we can make it simpler if you just go to the next slide. So like a graphic artist and like a product designer make like a t-shirt, like you sell the t-shirt, but graphic artist can still own his work and the maker as well. And whoever purchased the t-shirt knows that it comes from like Hassan Rahim or whatever, the designer who's working on it, because it's this wallet. And he can also like hold, gain other assets from his relationship directly on chain with the maker. Crypto, blockchain, like one of the biggest and I would say underused like asset is like splits, immutable splits. So basically the split is going to exist no matter what, nobody can change it. Like if there's money going into this contract, it's going to be split that way. No one can change it. No one can be like, oh, your contract is void or like we need to change something. It's going to happen no matter what. And I think this is kind of like one of our secret tools, like to use an existing tool. There's like amazing split tools and just empower and plug it into like hyper collective practices. Yeah, campaign mode, like sure, like we'll make products, like we're working actually with FWB, their first merch collection designed by their designers within their communities, but they're gonna gain primary royalties from primary market sales, which is super interesting. And also like royalties for designers in the fashion industry is like non-existent, like I think very few people, like LeBron doesn't get royalties.
You want to tell people how it works right now usually?
Yeah, how does it work?
You just work for like,
So like if Nike comes, like how does it work with Nike?
just
They
gonna,
pay you up front and then they C&D you when they put your article on Essence.
I would say it's more like
Hypothetically.
you just get a payroll, but like your work, you just sign a contract that all your work is donated to the company.
So you get so basically you get a payroll, so you get a fixed cost, you create something, and that company gets all the upside from your product that you created, no matter, like, so if it was super genius, they get paid the same, you get paid the same amount, they get the upside.
Yeah, and like, I think it's like interesting if you're like a mediocre designer and like you wanna work at Nike and get paid like 300K, like 500K like a year, but like if you're more like tuned into the pulse or you're working on very specific like project, the upside is kind of like ridiculous, and like I want to be able to like obviously capture that, but also the other people that are working with me, like I know the best pattern makers, like the best like 3D shoe designers, and like they shouldn't have to work, because of like the value that we brought, and like if you DYOR, like you can see some of the projects I worked on, and it's like, it's kind of like ridiculous that this is like the end goal, So then I just got crypto, and honestly, just being in like Web3 for a year now, I've said no to like all the brands. I mean, like all the brands. Like some of my favorite brands have hit me up, and I'm like, no. I was like, oh, can I get like ownership? And I'm like, no, we don't do that. So I was like, no, like not interested in working anything that doesn't like include any type of ownership. And I'm also like too red pilled and like committed to work on this. So, but like, I guess it's more, this slide is more about like anything you can imagine, you should try and get blockchains to it. Like when I started building this, nothing for fashion, like real clothes designers, product designers, furniture designers, jewelry designers, nothing existed really. But I'm like, but the contracts are there, the tech is there. You can literally build like contracts on chain that will route profits to everybody who participated in it, no matter what. Like no one's really doing that. And then I would see that there's kind of like a skeuomorphic idea of like people doing like, like a digital shoe, that you can own. And I'm like, what if I could make like a real shoe that I can own and wear? but having blockchain backing it up in the sense of like the designers, the makers, the photographer, the stylist who shot the image could like gain, like styling and fashion is so important, but like 99% of them can't pay their rent. So I'm like, you bring value to this product because I bought it because I saw your photo, like you should be able to capture that value. So, I mean, and then there's even the layer of like Instagram accounts, you know, like your favorite like outdoor Instagram account or your favorite sneaker Instagram account, or even like take accounts like Hidden and Wire or things like that. Like you always have to create another product on top of like the platform to be able to live off of it when the value they create is already there. You know, they have hundreds of thousands of followers. This should be monetized and archived on chain forever. So, and now it's possible. You know, it's just like there's no one really, and no cap, but like there's not really anybody interesting right now building it aside from like me and my team. So, but it's always to say like I'm a fashion designer. I read like blockchain and smart contracts. I'm like, wow, this is genius. You know, like we need this, and decided to build. But like as like a filmmaker or like a writer, I mean, you're a philosophy, your friend, you should just imagine it and build it, because people are going to help you. You're going to get funding, and it's going to be possible. It's just like a visual break. It's actually Simon Denis, like an artist that is doing some type of crypto work, but his non-crypto practice is actually like basically creating like fashion and art sculptures using fashion as composable. Like he made like this like Chanel and Patagonia like antique sleeping bags, talking about obviously like separation between like VCs rocking Patagonia and like how like the people who really need crypto and blockchain don't even have like an idea, you know, they're sleeping in sleeping bags in like the street. So, but just this, the fact that he did like a do-it-yourself remake of pieces was inspiring. It's also, it just looks nice. What's after? Oh yeah, so I love diagrams, but this is just like, you know, we had like level 1, level 99, level 1. This is like level 999, like what the long term of what we're doing, you know, and we can just slide through like the next 2 slides, but you can see that there's so many other things to plug into the protocol. If you go to the next slide, you know, like you can have like people can get paid for doing like product reviews, which like they kind of do, but they get paid in like USD, but you can get paid in like the project's tokens. You know, you can have ownership in like Lululemon if you do like yoga videos for them.
Take it one further. You can say that even if you're treating a token as an equity stake, like you've made that product video, and every time someone watches it, that's on chain, and like every so often a smart contract fire off and be like, all right, cool, we're gonna pay you out. Yeah, at FWB, we have a whole writing platform called Works in Progress, and that's ultimately what we're going to be moving towards.
But even in FWB, like there's a distribution every year. So like if you're hype in the Discord, you know, like I don't post that much, but whenever I post, it's interesting. You know? It reacts on your posts, and every year they just redistribution ownership to the people who participate the most, which is like.
It's true. The dude who actually got the most FWB as like a dividend is just a hardcore shit poster, like phenomenal graphic designer, one of the best in the world, but also just the worst person you've ever met on the internet. Who is it? It's Nick. It's such a sweetheart as a human being, but like menace on the internet. And like lo and behold, he pulled a solid 4 or 5 figures.
Oh yeah,
just
And I just want to add on that though, because I mean, I was speaking to my parents at Van who are very into Facebook and all that. Imagine if Facebook paid you for your likes.
right.
yeah.
I mean, that's and what you
likes.
posted. That's the framework they're
The
talking
like
about.
was like $1.
Yeah, like they're actually, you generated content, you generated activity, you got people to our site that brought value to the site, and we're gonna pay that back to you as a dividend.
And there's like tools creating that for like, you know, if you can post a photo, you know, you can create an NFT and you own this photo, but the more views it gets, like it accrues in value from a platform's token, from a network's token. It's being built. I just think it's being built by like developers that like are super smart and amazing. They just have like
No people skills.
no people see it, you know, so if you have ideas, just come through, make it open source and participate. It's a bonus. Next slide, I think that's it, but it's like the last 2 slides were just like.
All right, thank you to all of our 3 speakers for amazing presentations. Why don't you sit in the front?
Make it word around.
Yeah, so today we actually have a pretty good opportunity because we have a very close-knit community here today. We actually want to make it more of an open conversation. So feel free to really ask about for their advice on your own personal projects and such. We want to make this a back and forth conversation, not just kind of an interview. You know, today, like just sitting here as kind of an audience member listening to you talk, we have the privilege of learning several aspects of Web3 today, right? We have infrastructure and tokenomics, we have fashion and design, and we also have social clubs and like the social scene and enabling better social activities with Web3, right? So we have the privilege of learning a very diverse range of the Web3 industry.
Also,
So
life alphas.
Yes, and
Yeah,
life alphas. So thank you so much for that. And one other thing I've noticed is that throughout this event, I've getting more the feeling that we're all just, you know, people. And, you know, we have the audience members here, like, you know, parents of the guests that we have here, right? So behind the computers, behind the facade of traders in Web3, we have to remember that each person behind that screen is still a person, right? If you're building your own community like FWB, you need to understand your audience as people. If you're building products, if you're trying to enable better user experiences with your Web3 product, you need to understand them as people, right? And throughout my own experience talking with a lot of founders, a lot of them are very focused on the financialization aspect of their companies. But the very few golden founders in Web3 right now are actually focused on the product, and we need more of those people in our industry.
Yeah,
right? And
I think that's super important. And like, even especially to like, let's say, like the people in the fashion community, like, or just designers, they would like lose their minds if their worth was attached to like a token or a price, you know? So like, let's say we're building, like we're not gonna have a token probably for like the longest time, but the real founders that like are super interested, they don't care, you know, like, oh, like, I don't care if there's no token, just like build up the protocol, build value. And we're like, oh, we'll have profit redistribution to like investors. He's like, nah, like, I don't want like your 5x, you know, like take that money and just build something greater. So I think that's like what is not really being spoken about, but you can build it and it's being built, like value without price, but price is still good.
Price is great. We love price.
price.
Yeah, I actually think that's really important too. One thing that I've had a lot of convos with VCs and then stuff like that in the last year. And I will always challenge them saying, does this need to be on chain in the first place? Which might be a little heretical to say at Blockchain Club, but it's true that the things that blockchain unlocks, you also have to really double down, triple down on that. That why does data sovereignty matter? Why does data portability matter? Why does it matter that as a user, I'm delivering value to my audience and the protocol? And what does it mean if I decide that I'm going to hit eject and I'm just going to disconnect my wallet and be like, peace, all my data is gone, like I'm out. So again, that forces you as a builder and as a networker to think about what happens if this point of failure decides to go. What happens if this user decides to take their shit and go somewhere else? What happens if I'm like Union Sushi and I get vampire attacked, right? Like all that's very legit, right? So the people ultimately they matter the most. And I think for a lot of the young builders in here, you want to consider people and you want to meet them at their best and at their worst, and think about what those two extremes could, potentially be.
it really resonated with your story of like, you know, thinking about how to plan just a dope ass party for your members, right? Like, what is a good user experience? Because you're building a community. So a party, a meetup is your user experience.
Yeah.
And just thinking about really how to build an experience without caring too much about the other stuff. That's how.
I'll be a little adversarial here just for kicks. We obviously have been all around the world throwing parties between LA and Paris. And I've seen people have like crazy, like $1 million sound systems, lasers, LED floors, everything. And they have like 5 people there, right? And us, we're like in the basement of some club and everyone's just like sweating, drinking, having a great time. And lo and behold, out of the 500-600 people RSVP'd, I would say maybe 20% ended up filing applications and owning the token the next day, right? Price goes up once we show people what it's worth.
Yeah,
Not the other way around.
the crowd's dope and the music's insane.
Rivals the utility.
Yeah.
Ooh, for bars.
Does anybody have any questions to start? Yeah.
This is really aimed at Jeremy. So I'm an artist, I have content out. This world makes sense. I have a 20-year catalog. Now reimagine in space. So it makes me excited when you talk about adding people that help me create that content. You can almost imagine going in the past and finding all those people. But if it's my grandmother or if it's my wife who's never gonna get, still doesn't understand it, like how do you think that could work?
I don't know. I'm pretty forceful. You know, when I see people, like I'll buy them ledgers. Like I'll buy them hard wallet. I'm like, oh, it's stored in here. Whenever like you're ready, you can get the address to send it to, and like whenever they're ready to unlock it and have it theirs, they can do it. But I think it's like it's the minimum. You know, just like how you need to find out how to boot up a laptop or like do like hotmail.com, have an email. Like you need an Ethereum address. And I would say if there's some party that you really can't find, that's where a DAO treasury or a community treasury comes to mind, and like until the split smart contracts can actually be, you can have some also mutable ones, like until that person comes forward, the royalties are gonna go to the treasury for like community projects. And I would even say like charity, like these are things that literally no one, I mean, sure, a little bit in crypto, but like you have NFT projects donating to like animal shelters and stuff like that. Meanwhile, there's like humans in the street, so I think having these types of mechanisms, like we're working on a project, like huge alpha league, but basically having a composable dress and a composable like outerwear poncho as NFTs, all the different parts being separate, selling the NFTs until we fill up the price to create a dress and then donating that dress. So basically creating like on-chain actions to give up literally like free clothes that are made when everybody's being paid like more than properly. So I think you can be transparent about it, and hopefully these people will come forward and be able to like claim,
But I think that's a good distinction too, and it's really tricky because, I mean, I think what Jeremy's doing is like going to have to be, it's so important to help onboard artists into owning their work. But it does kind of feel scary to be like, whoa, and I remember this when I started, because everyone starts with this, it's like that laptop mentality is great. It's like you'd open up you just start with going to, well, not a plug for Consensys, but go to MetaMask.io and you can get a wallet. But you start with opening up the laptop and then you start logging in. And like when you think you can get there in one night and you see what someone's doing, like checking your email and like, you're like, whoa, this is like it's really overwhelming and it's daunting. But one step at a time, over the course of a few months, and then you look back and you're like, whoa, like I'm proficient now, And there is a lot of people to help. There are some core tools, but there's a lot of people to help. Like Discord is basically a chat room that's very familiar in crypto. A lot of people probably in Discords. People are really, really helpful. Some are too helpful.
You can even like store half of like the private key yourself, like some like I onboarded like all my interns, bought them ledger wallets and like their seed phrase, like I'll store a piece of it, myself if they are afraid to lose it. And like they didn't really they're not really active, but let's say there's like a free drop. I'll be like, oh, go on this, mint this, and 6 months later that drop is worth like 5K, or they got whitelisted for another NFT. And like these are things that like it is happening, and like these people should have that value.
I'll even take it one step behind where it's just, again, the core question of, does this need to be on chain, right? That if you were
How to build it for them.
exactly, yeah. So, that's a people question, right? That Jeremy nailed it, where it's so much of what you're doing at that point is you're building a whole project, but you're saving this small amount in custody for people who can't access it just yet. And there are tools like Spots, et cetera, 0x splits, where you can put in this person's Ethereum address, and when it's time for them to use it, you can give them the seed phrase, be like, basically, here's the keys to your safe deposit.
Yeah.
You can store the funds in an NFT, that like you can send to them afterwards. Like because the NFT is a smart contract. I think and there's even ways where like yeah, some of these splits, like 0x splits, are mutable or immutable. But I think there's something that like not a lot of people are using, which is also like almost like human oracles. Like what if you have someone like, you know, like managing the splits, you know, like every week. Obviously, like we're in a world where we're like trying to like reduce the human control, but I think there's like an in between, you know, especially when you work with more like forward thinking or with artists. Yeah.
It'd be like the people that manage trusts, right?
Yeah.
Like in the real world. Yeah. We had more questions. I know we got a bunch. Yep. What's up? Let's start with you.
So can you go a little bit on how like splits work? Like I'm not too familiar with them, like on the technical side of like.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally a smart contract, let's say a first pool of money. And let's say it's an NFT project that, let's say it's an art project, a sculpture where 3 artists worked on it. Then the sculpture is being sold continuously and the primary market funds are going into this pool and the secondary market funds are going to this pool. But this pool is a smart contract and as soon as you click split, it splits to these 3 artists, like personal wallet. And like, no matter what happens, like, you can make it immutable so that no one can stop it. You know, like in 10 years, you know, like that person's child will be getting those funds, you know, like.
So I have a follow-up question.
You should check out also like 0xsplits.xyz, I think.
Is that like just kind of like talking about it?
Yeah, open source smart contract for splits.
I feel like you're a good person that might have like some like advice that I can get. So I'm like working on a project that's like a non-for-profit, like trying to help the homeless. And we're partnered up with the homeless shelter. We want to do like, we actually want to pretty much do a split. It's like half to the shelter, half to the homeless. But an issue that I'm having trouble like solving is how do I make it and how do I give that person that's experiencing homelessness like an address that can be like reliable, and how can I show the community that like they're actually gonna get that address? Because I like the human factor of like me having to give them the wallet and their address, it can create like distrust in the community.
Yeah.
So like from like a technical standpoint, I was just wondering if you like had any ideas.
Honestly, dude, like I'm going through the same problem right now, like even sewers, you know, it's like 50-year-old ladies that like have a Nokia phone. You know, like they can't really access their ledger balance, you know, they can't see how much it is. So these are tools that aren't even built, you know, like so how can you access like your funds in this secure wallet that's yours only if you don't have like a smartphone? Because this is already like classist, you know, and like it's kind of like, I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's like that's how early this tech is. I don't know, I'm still figuring it out. And like there's probably like tools, you know, like I'm sure there can be like an on-chain human oracle like holding assets, you know, and like maybe like they'll take a percentage of those assets that can be like you know, multi-sig, I don't know, but I'm sure you can be original to figure out a way to do it. Maybe a multi-sig is the way where you have 3 signers, you know, and like 2 out of 3 signers need to approve to release those funds to that person, let's say, to confirm their identity or something like that.
Even at a non-technical level, I think there's a real interesting opportunity here. Like I said, have a fragrance shop, it's pretty much on Skid Row. And so I think about people like that all the time where it's just like, what's the most non-technical way we could do this? And if you think about like OG Bitcoin, OG Ethereum era stuff, you could literally pull up to, exactly, you could pull up to someone, give them cash and they would, you know, be like, all right, fine, what's your wallet address? I'll send you ETH or whatever.
Yeah, that's how
I think the 3 of us have done it, probably.
I still do it.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point is that like maybe we're in a world right now where just you have to just still use a little human interaction for that. And you just got to go a traditional off ramp with a bank. But what I think is where maybe the innovation where you could use the tools for that is the revenue collection side, right? So where that notion of what Jeremy was saying with an NFT is a contract, and you know when it's issued, you get money coming in to an account, and then when it's traded, because it's on a public ledger, those are royalties that are paid. It's kind of like the idea of like a song being played. There's royalties being played, and maybe those go into those accounts, and then you know maybe there's some trust, maybe you do a multi-signature, but the idea is that like then you just have to pay cash or you have to do it manually. So I do think that there's probably this world where there's this like hybrid of like human, like Web 2 or like physical versus like that, because we aren't fully there.
We don't have like the infrastructure yet to like completely cut out
Well,
everyone.
and I'll tell you why. I mean, frankly, you really want to know why is regulation. It's the government, it's stable coins problems. A lot of people don't want to touch the on-ramp between banks, don't want to touch it because it's a hot mess, right? I can get kind of future on this, but I just like Biden's actually recent thing, his drop of his executive order on crypto was hugely bullish. Actually, they're saying it was a game changer for the industry because what Biden actually said is he said, this is legit, this is an innovation. And he said, we need to regulate it, but like, we actually do think that this is the next big wave of innovation. He didn't use those terms, but that was kind of the indicative thing that he was saying. And like, that's really huge because you have China on one side that's like cracking down and it's messing up all this innovation. Like these are going to be, Jeremy's Canadian, but these are American entrepreneurs right here. You know, I'm not, I'm still a salary man, but you guys are American entrepreneurs. And like, do we really want to be in a place where people like that are stifled? And so I'm optimistic it's going to be a long road, but that area of the thing with like the fiat on-ramp from USD to USDC or USD to UST is still rife with just legal complexities.
And like, not to be the ops, but like, there's there's the peer-to-peer, you know, which is like government can't regulate peer-to-peer. And like sure, it's important for bigger institutions to like look at regulation, but for homeless people, for like people of color, for disenfranchised people, like peer-to-peer is the safest for them to like not lose like 30% of the first wealth they've ever built in their life.
Or some of these people like don't even have access to like a bank account.
Yeah.
They don't have the proper documentation.
Yeah.
You know, like I was talking to them, like some of them like they can't apply to it because they don't have an address to like put down.
I do think that
You don't need that for crypto.
like their solution would be a human oracle or human oracles, you know, literally a place that you can go verify your identity and that person can release the funds, you know, through a peer-to-peer system.
Then are you like saying that you would have the Oracle as like one of those third signers, like if you were doing a 3-6?
Yeah, 100%. You know, think about it like a OG example, safe deposit box, right? You have two keys up front. Your, you know, homeless person would have one key, but then your Oracle would have the other, right? Like basically the permission lies with the organization that you're working with, someone who's trusted and can be like, all right, you got this ETH or you got this crypto in the bank. I'm going to swap it out on cash. Here's proof of transaction. Here's your money, right? Then I'm very bullish on the fact that this tech won't fully replace human beings ever, but it's going to augment what we're able to do for folks. And so much of what's interesting about crypto is that we're aiming for the margins of society. We're aiming for sex workers, people who are unhoused, people who don't have access to traditional banking for a variety of reasons. That can go for, you know, obviously money laundering. I keep bringing this up because it's funny, but it can also work well for people who just don't have access to these systems. And we're building this world for people like that.
Yeah. I do think there's one thing to say though, that like we're saying money laundering because like, just like the financial system and just like a $100 bill, like you think tools can be used for nefarious purposes or they can be used for good purposes.
Yeah.
So like, there's no way to say like, I think a lot of times, and we're obviously very excited, but like, there's a lot of, you know, kind of like, it's going to solve all the world's problems or this and that, but like anything, these are new tools, but you know, they can be good used, they can be used for good things and bad things.
Crypto's like a Rorschach test, you know, like you can see it truly like someone's real intention just by their activity.
That's deep.
And I think,
Should we keep going? Maybe we'll keep the, sorry.
no, because since we've been talking about regulations and whatnot, I want to ask you a question, AJ, concerning your role at Consensys. So
Yeah.
currently we know that more than 70% of Ethereum nodes are provided on centralized service. And this kind of puts dApps and, you know, other applications at the risk of downtime and security breaches. And we've learned that MetaMask and Infura has actually banned users in certain jurisdictions due to legal compliance.
True.
Okay, already, put me on the hot seat.
You know, I wanna ask you, you know, as the key
Yeah.
contributors to the bridge between Web3 and Web2, you know, in which people talk about banking the unbanked and decentralized ownership. What's your opinion on maybe the role of regional politics plays on the growth of Web3?
It's a fantastic question. And Nadia was with me, my fiance was like, you sent me this one question before, and I was like freaking out. I was like, they're sending me such good questions. I had to call one of my coworkers and be like, whoa, how would you answer this? Because this is really tricky and really complicated and a really good question. So I'll try and kind of reiterate some of the points that you brought up and then say how I'd answer it. So as I mentioned in the beginning, Consensys was the first mover. We were the ones who sort of built the infrastructure, like I said, like the roads, the bridges, and in this Web3. And then we built what MetaMask is sort of like the car, and we're using this sitting metaphor. And what that did was that also gave us like a lot of first mover advantages, in the sense that a lot of people use our car, like kind of like the Toyota Camry of the Web3, where a lot of people use it. And then a lot of people use our bridges and our roads and all that stuff. So one of the things that is brought up a lot, and I don't know if the numbers are getting thrown out, but it's really hard to tell, is that a node. So a node is a computer that connects to the blockchain, right? So compare that with Facebook or Amazon. All of your data, all of your activity is stored in Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos's little lair somewhere, aka their server farms somewhere. And with the blockchain, every single one of you can host a node, a computer at your house that would maintain this blockchain. So that's kind of the basis of it. Infura is our developer tools. That's basically a lot of the software and it's actually the algorithm that would help program it. Infura is like it's going to go down as like one of the greatest pieces of algorithmic software in history, because it is like basically this incredible algorithm that helps route transactions to different nodes based on like uptime and activity loads and all that stuff, which is extremely hard to build. So it's kind of like we did build this. And so a lot of nodes use Infura's software because it's really hard to replicate. And one thing, and this is what my coworker said, was kind of true. He's like, everyone wants to build the cool, sexy shit on top, but people don't want to build it. My dad's a structural engineer, so he'll resonate with this. People don't want to build the bridges and the roads and all that stuff. And so we're like, Alchemy is one that's coming in. Alchemy is great. They're also all housed on AWS servers, so that's pretty centralized. But the point being is that like people don't want to really build the unsexy roads and things like that. And that's kind of one area that we've gotten to be and we're trying to decentralize, frankly. Like I can't give away too much alpha, but I do have to say is that we're working to think about how we can be more of a community-owned and decentralized.
Wait, so there's gonna be a token?
No, I'm not saying anything like that. But the idea is that there's that. So now let's go to the regions, right? So that's the other question, is that MetaMask didn't block anyone in any regions, but we all know what happened, the last few weeks have been really tough for our world. And that's all about Russia's invasion. And what people don't realize is that, and this is probably a good decision, instead of NATO going and bombing Russia, nobody wants to go, do that and mess with any nuclear war, all that. But we basically bombed them with the US dollar. We weaponized the US dollar. So what that means is that basically what we're trying to do is we are hoping that Putin's cronies or the Russian population will be so fed up and in so much pain themselves. Now his cronies will lose all their yachts and all this stuff that they'll either take him out or they will go to wherever he is and do a coup. That's basically what our plan is. Let's hope that the Russian people get pissed enough to go do a coup. So it's like, imagine if Russia did that, they shut off all our bank accounts, they shut off our Netflix subscriptions, they shut off everything in hoping that we would go to the White House and go take Biden out. Like, that's a tall order for the average person.
Wait, so
You're too round to say that.
MetaMask shut down user access?
No. So MetaMask did not. Infura, what it did was it shut down the nodes in sanctioned countries. The quickest way to go to jail in America isn't money laundering. It is not, and anyone that's done business overseas, and maybe I'll sue, I don't want to, don't arrest me, but the quickest way to go to jail in America is to do business with a sanctioned country. There's a guy, an Ethereum developer, his name starts with a V, I can't remember his name, but he's facing something like 8 to 11 years in prison right now. Virgil is his name. And he's debating 8 to 10 years in prison for going to do one speaking arrangement in North Korea. Not for anything he did, anything else. It was because he did one speaking arrangement in North Korea. So you do not want to mess with the US government when they say, don't do business somewhere. And you kind of have to just say, and guess what though? The blockchain though still works because the user can still choose the nodes in their wallet that they want to go to. So you can still, basically what we had to do is we had to just turn off the access to those nodes in countries that were sanctioned. So it was tricky. I don't like it at all. And like one thing that's interesting with all this is that Russian citizens can't access their bank account, they can't access their stock market, they can't access anything. And yet, though, one where they have, what we're talking about this is that like they can access their Ethereum and they can access their Bitcoin. And $100 million of donations have gone to Ukraine in crypto right now. And that's something that they can actually, I mean, I don't know exactly how they're offering people, but they can use that. I mean, that's immutable and that's permissionless money. The very interesting thing about all this is that, and this I'll stop, is that the permissionless nature of the blockchain. One of the biggest things that Putin messed up, it was his big fatal error, is he's been saving, oil prices have been going up. Putin supplies 40% of yours to Europe. He's been saving his little piggy bank all this savings. And it's really been gold because he didn't want to own US dollars because he said, if I own dollars, the US government, if I own treasuries, the US government can freeze that. So he saved all this gold and he stored it in all these different places. Well, guess what? Your gold is still a permissioned asset because you still have, the bank froze the gold. So in many ways, that was a good thing. Putin doesn't have access to his war chest, right? To fund his war. But on the other side is that all these assets for the Russian people, wherever they stored it, they can be frozen too. So again, this is where the pluses and the minuses of the blockchain is, where there's no permission. You don't have to ask anyone for permission to access your funds on the blockchain. There's no one that can take that away from you. But the challenge is also is that, how does that happen for, fortunately, and the data shows Putin doesn't own any crypto. Like he doesn't actually own a bunch of Bitcoin or things like that. So he can't, but like he would if he could, and the data would show. And there isn't a lot of data that's showing that he's using the blockchain for nefarious purposes. And so that's kind of the one thing is that I would say crypto actually is relatively clean in this, but I think it's going to get a lot of negative attention because there's that assumption that we can't control this, and that's challenging, but we can control his bank account.
But regulators love the fact that 100% is just transparent and like no one's talking about that. Like you can see everything. You can see people taking out money in their Coinbase account, who it is. Like you can't, unless you have some like a couple years and then like learn the tools like Tornado Cash and all that to properly like launder, like you're gonna get like traced.
Yeah, some of the best, Katie Hahn, there's that guy Brian at A16C, A16, they all go to A16C, which is Andreessen Horowitz. Raihan's buddies, but the thing about they all go there, but the amazing crypto investors and actually crypto like big people that are really enthusiastic, a lot of them are ex-DOJ, Department of Justice attorneys and prosecutors. Like Katie Hahn she did the Silk Road case and she was like, she's like, I was going into this to find criminals. And I realized like the blockchain left a crumb the whole way where they could obfuscate that in normal banks. And there was a crumb the whole way. So they were like, this was amazing. And along the way, I found out that this was an incredible technology. And now I want to invest in it and change my whole career path.
If people get scammed, it's just because like they weren't safe. Like truly, like if you buy a scam, that's because like you fed into like some bullshit. You didn't do your research. And it's kind of like,
Going back to the node runners part. So I built this decentralized document signing application, Ethereum and Arweave. And basically our whole service hosted on, our website's actually hosted on decentralized storage networks like IPFS. And the fact that 70% of nodes of IPFS are run in the United States kind of limits where our users lie, because that means the users in Southeast Asia and nations that would have sovereign laws where you can't legally access US sites, they will have to hook it up to a VPN to use our service. So the internet isn't flat.
And to answer your question that previously, like, do you think it's going to? I think that's going to be. It's going to be a battleground. Like, I don't think it's going to change. Like, China kicked out all the Bitcoin miners. Guess where they all went? They all went to Middle America, red states, Oklahoma, Texas. They all went from China. Now, like all the Bitcoin miners are in these red states. Not a bad thing, but it's just so fascinating because it's going to be a battleground of jurisdictions. And El Salvador, we can keep going. So you're right, in Southeast Asia.
I think VPNs are going to be like super important, like decentralized permissionless VPNs that like keep your data like secure. And that's going to be like key.
And the other aspect is that when you're trying to build like completely decentralized end user products like us, right? We find that like storing a file on Arweave is great. It's permanent, it's immutable, it's decentralized, but it takes 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Users can't use it. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to run some nodes, which means it's centralized as a cache, and then send it to Arweave, but you kind of have to sacrifice that level of decentralization in order to do that. But if we manage to find a way to decentralize the node runners, I think that's like the really what we're looking for in the next 5 to 6 years.
Don't you think there's gonna be like an L2 on Arweave that's gonna be like very temporary storage before like a longer, because Arweave is like the permaweb is obviously the solution, but it's currently like, it takes 20 minutes to save a file. So
I mean, in effect, that's no different than like existing like just regular web technologies. You take, kind of these primitives like Memcache and other server-side tech where you're building temporary states to make shit go faster, right? Like it's not permanent, it's not hitting the server, but it's still really fast. We haven't even got there yet.
like
So
a
I
ZK
do-
sync.
like a ZK sync,
ZK
right,
sync,
exactly,
yeah.
so stuff like ZKs and rollups and all of that, optimistic.
Aztec.
As right, are probably gonna build a lot of speed and build the next level of like consumer friendly tech and will allow for a wider distribution.
Yeah, I think we just need maybe a little, the time will come sooner than we think, I think.
Oh, yeah.
There's a balance
Yeah.
between like centralization and decentralization.
Well, yeah, there's like, we're in kind of the 56K or whatever it was, like the AOL version of it, some of it. But I also think like, I don't think anyone realized, I could say a Consensys and Infura and MetaMask, like, I don't think people they knew this world was gonna come. They didn't think it was gonna come this fast.
Yeah.
Like, this is so fast. Like, talk about like 2022, like 2020 was DeFi summer, like, and then the NFTs, like FWE launched, but really before NFTs became a big thing. And so like, that was less than that was a year ago, basically.
Yeah.
So we're talking about stuff like, talk about how fast, like, I think a really 1 year in Web3 is a decade in the real world.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's really cool what Consensys does is to try to onboard, million users to Ethereum, right? That's the end goal.
Yep.
And the way to do that is to build products like MetaMask, that everybody knows how to use. Your grandma probably doesn't know how to use DeFi, but MetaMask, it's pretty easy.
We try. I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah, the UI I was gonna say is kind of trash.
Yeah, well, we need Jeremy, that's it.
I mean,
No, it is. It's tricky. It's a very, but if you don't have one, we're gonna get Van set up with his MetaMask after this. But it's a very interesting way to kind of engage with the internet. And I think just one way, I mean, you can go and literally, and I think there was a question about MetaMask institutional here, so I'll touch that. Like, what MetaMask is built for as an app is to be composable with what anyone builds. That's the key of it, and to be very, very secure. And as I think it was Raihan, you mentioned, like, you can go to a site and you can like do things and you can sign things and you can do some transactions, and then you can disconnect and move all your activity, your assets in a secure way and go somewhere else. So it's like bringing your value to the internet, which is just so interesting. And I think the wallet wars are just beginning too. I think there's so many new wallets and things that are exciting out there, but just like, I think we'll see how secure they are. That's, I think.
Yeah. It's this thing with OpenSea, right? It's super centralized, but they gain the most users.
But I think it's like someone who's gonna fork it.
Yeah.
Like someone.
It looks
create a
rare. I
better
mean, that's what
platform.
looks
Yeah,
rare.
I mean,
It's
everyone's-
basically a cyber attack.
Everyone's trying, which is funny. And I also think just my personal view here is that chasing full decentralization is almost like, using BitTorrent,
Yes.
right? Like that's not gonna happen in a way that is consistent, stable, and fast enough. Because you can imagine that your processing load is easily 100 or 1000xing if you're having to constantly basically route traffic and load balance.
Yeah.
So some centralization is probably not a terrible thing. You want to centralize the parts that are most prone to failure, but you want to decentralize like the last mile stuff. You want to
Yes.
make sure that people are safe, secure, anon if they need to be, and then have that opportunity.
We want users to, like, when they use the product, right? They're not feeling like they're interacting with Web3 at all.
100%.
They're
Yeah.
doing what they're getting used to in Web2, but then they're enjoying the security that Ethereum has to provide.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's also gonna be the future, is that like, we don't know, like, who knows how Swift works? You know, we shut down that like that. Maybe you don't need to know, maybe you don't need to know how like the.
OG banking.
Yeah, Swift is the payment system. It's basically a messaging system actually, of the way that wires would get sent around the world.
Yo, wires.
Yeah, but nobody knows, but that's okay if you don't know, like, you don't need it always, like, if you want to, you can get deep into like how, you know, the blocks are formed and how you do roll-ups, things like that, but you don't have to, you know?
I think, yeah, to your point, we're like conditioned to think in like hierarchical way, you know, like OpenSea or like MetaMask being the one, but I think in Web3, you can see it's like, it's multi-chain, it's like multi-platform, like, yeah, like I don't really like OpenSea, I'd rather like trade on Zora, but that's like for me, but there's community and there's traffic on Zora. Maybe it's not the number one, but it's more about like the top 10 are all equally interesting or useful in my opinion.
And Web 2, let's not forget, like Web 2,
Ooh, mood life.
it was Web 2 right there.
There.
But Web 2 has turned into an oligopoly, like it's
Yes.
literally an oligopoly. It's Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, what's Fang, Alphabet, and it's literally the whole internet's owned by 4 or 5 companies. Like, and so that's the other thing is like, I would hope that there would be a much more like dispersion of ownership in this new model. I think people forget that like AWS and Microsoft, for example, like that's like how much of our data is stored in those servers.
It actually relates to one of the questions we want to ask to Raihan, because in the DAO landscape today, very few DAOs are actually fully decentralized, right? Because the votes are not binding.
Yeah.
So do you think it's possible for DAOs to realize full decentralization, and do you actually think it's productive that way?
My mom's a political scientist. So I did this for a little bit. The political underpinnings of decentralization are also really hard because when you think about who makes decisions, people make decisions, right? We can't fully offload all that to a smart contract or a snapshot or something like that. And people are always going to play with different weights of voting, even at FWB, Ajay, I mean, you see this all the time, where it's like, do we do one wallet, one vote?
Someone wrote that today. They said someone argued for one wallet, one vote.
Right, it was in the environment, but then you can still play it. You can still play it, right? You know, it's like you can then kind of basically simple attack by saying like, all right, I'm going to split my funds across X number of wallets. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're playing a different game when it comes to running a DAO. And, you know, so to answer your question in the short version, no, I don't think that there is a method in which you're fully decentralized because you're also playing with everyone's attention here, right? If I asked, you know, the undergrads here that like, hey, you have how many classes? Great. Like you have 4 classes, you're taking X number of units. Now I want you to take another 4 classes that you're just auditing, that you're not getting a grade for. I want you to hang out and I want you to do a project for each of them. Where is their attention going to go? Their attention is going to go to where they're getting the grade, right? And as a DAO member, your time, your energy, your attention is finite, right? So people are naturally going to gravitate towards where they are putting out their best work, spending their best time and having the most, you know, efficient use of their time for what is efficient to them, whether it's capital allocation, time allocation, or again, cultural allocation, right? And we all kind of hit those marks in different ways. And, you know, to the point of like Zora, LooksRare, or OpenSea, right? People will find different facets of each of those platform systems, protocols that are interesting to them, and DAOs are no exception.
I think machine learning and AI are gonna like help DAO voting, like different types of weight mechanisms for users. Long term.
Still very early.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Vitalik's spending a lot of his time on that, like
Yeah.
quadratic voting.
yeah, life extension research.
Yeah.
And
I think Jerry had a
Oh, wait,
question.
Yeah, sorry, I
Jerry
know there's
asked.
some more in the back.
Yeah, I just had 2 questions. One was following up on what he said about DAOs. Is that like right now, like DAOs are the hype, or for the past like year and a half, right? A lot of people started saying that you can make DAOs for anything, right? Buying constitution, you know, buying like an NBA team and stuff, buying a baseball team. However, like people are also saying that DAOs are like useful for startups, but going up what he said, also what you just mentioned, can there ever be like governance in terms of voting for startups? Because usually startups move pretty fast and you have to get agile with your decision making. So how do you go against the government that DAOs are, because right now I think the DAOs are not the best tool for governing a startup, because the founders should be the ones that make decisions and doing trials and errors. But people are saying like, hey, this is the vehicle to transform how workspaces are happening.
That could still be under a DAO. There's just no governance, no.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think that what you're doing at that point is you're setting parameters for your governance and how weighed your decision making is, right? That very much you have this idea of exiting the community and progressive decentralization for DAOs, which are like, all right, we're gonna start with like, let's say myself and Jeremy making all the decisions, but we're gonna set a time horizon of like within 3 months or a year, this is now gonna go to everyone who holds a token. And we are gonna abstain from voting ourselves as like, the whales. And
Or even to everyone that owns like an NFT.
right,
that's
exactly.
Like afterwards, like I think it's like people aren't trying like the different things.
But how's that different from like traditional voting with your common stock? With your class A, class B shares?
Yeah, but the thing is
Yeah,
like, look, if
that's-
you're hitting traditional common stock class A, class B, right? Like there's still regulation and there's still a lot of work to be done there. Even for example, for Gatekeeper, our product, right? We're building a sub DAO for that. And how interesting is it from day one of this sub DAO being formed, we are gonna basically have our clients, the users of Gatekeeper, purchase tokens for the sub DAO, right? So they are owner operators of the product itself, which is so huge, right? You can't really do that in a traditional startup at the moment. So DAOs is a mechanism to facilitate that, huge opportunity. And it's gonna be a case by case basis. That's not gonna be a one size fits all, depending on what your software or what your product is.
And
And
I,
that slows down though, slow down your movement of your organization if you're letting decision making happen every time when you need to take an action.
Here's the thing, not every decision needs to be voted on, right? Like for
Yes, 100%.
example,
let's do FWB. I think that's a great example of like, so so now I've like, it's kind of interesting because Raihan started this thing and they work, I would say very much like a startup. They get shit done. Like I actually kind of view, no hate to my consensus employer, it's just a corporation where I have things like, I look at FWB a lot of times and I'm like, you guys have your shit together way more than Consensys does in terms of like operating. We have like OKRs, like, like crap like this, like a lot of startup stuff that is like, we have goals as a team and there is like, so in the treasury side, like I have a lot of discretion about how to make decisions and I set the goals for what we're gonna do and all that. But then if I'm gonna move any money from the wallet, like that's not my money, that's the community's. So like how dare I, if I'm the treasury lead, like I can come up with a plan, but I can't execute that plan because that's not my money and that's a huge decision until I go to the community and I publicly go to the community and vote. And that's one thing I think, so that's kind of like how we would separate it. I think that's a good way to like delineate what's important to go to a vote. Because if you put everything out to vote, you're right, nothing's gonna get done. But the other thing I'd just say on, you mentioned class A, class B, traditional like DAOs require users to vote and to be engaged. And like people do vote. And that is a challenge in some DAOs, people don't vote. But like in traditional finance, like Facebook should have dropped immediately after its IPO. You wanna know why? Because Zuckerberg changed the share classes where he gets like all the voting power. And like literally, like I don't think, isn't the class Bs like don't have any voting or something like that? Like this is like that would have been a driver to like this guy's scamming us, let's jump this thing. And so I think that the future of like IPOs is people are gonna be like, what's our voting participation? Like I can own the stock, but I also wanna vote. Nobody votes in proxies,
Almost making it like a second layer to like, whether it's like participation or something, but like, oh, you don't need like to have like the biggest weight, like the biggest ownership amount to have necessarily like the most votes.
Yeah,
But
it's a great question, a great point.
Yeah, that's like people are going through right now. Like I think governance is just useless a little bit right now.
I think it depends on, end justifies the means, right? It depends on what kind of startup you're trying to do and like, you see a lot of people in the space trying to launch a DAO, but like, why do you launch a DAO? I heard DAOs are popular now.
So
Solely for market
for
purposes.
sentiment, you can see what kind of people are feeling like, people want the radio or not.
Gotcha. Okay, my second question is like a live question. So it was like how fast crypto's moving, how fast Twitter space is moving on crypto Twitter and stuff. And also you mentioned like friends and benefits, right? You're giving dividends back to people who participate in Discord. Like the more often you participate, like more likely you're gonna receive like higher tokens, right? So do you ever like find yourself being too attached into like, not even like Web3, but Web2, which is looking at like all this stuff, and how do you detach yourself so they can spend more time with reality, with the physical world?
I don't do that. I think that's my answer. These guys know I don't do that. I joked on Twitter a long time ago that every DAO needs a person who, if they are not on the internet, they will die. I'm that person on Twitter.
It's like oxygen.
Yeah, like I treat it like I'm Neo watching The Matrix all the time because, you know, you get life alpha and insights all the time about how you're working internally and how you're perceived externally. And I think that like it's no different than traditional, you know, PR comms role in a way. That what I do is I measure and manage your sentiment day in, day out. Like it's really important to make sure that people, not only do they feel heard, but they are actually heard. And sometimes, you know, that will take a toll on like my mental health, which is real, but you know, that's why I come here. I think coming to Marshall is my therapy because I've lapped everyone who's teaching me, which is like us sit in lecture, I'll be like, okay, I can switch off for 3 hours now, which is just the best brag of all time. But I also I work with amazing homies.
Yeah.
We still go out for like dinner and drinks. We like hit shows together. I went raving a ton this weekend. Like that's
To me, the best thing about Web3 is like people. You know, like it's like I'm not showing social tokens, you know, but just like building micro communities that like will like go out for like, I mean,
Like-minded people.
yeah, like-minded people, and honestly, like you'll meet like way more interesting people, and like it's nice to have some type of like aligned incentive also.
I think one other thing that really helps is also kind of knowing yourself and what you are able to commit to and not. One thing that I definitely struggled with around like my early 20s was just like over committing and saying yes to too many things. And at some point you will hit a ceiling and you will hate yourself. You'll wake up like, I'm dying and this sucks. So don't feel that way. As soon as you feel an inkling of that, just be like, all right, I'm gonna go for a really long walk and listen to some music or like talk to a friend. Because ultimately the reason why we do all this is for all of us in here. And it's not like an insular journey.
And I think it's a long game, like the infinite game, you know? It's like right now we're looking at like like, you know, a change in the portfolio in like 13% in like one day, but you gotta just zoom out. And like that's like one thing I'm happy about like working so much on like physical products is like, you know, I gotta put in that time and it's like I'm zooming out. I'm not on like OpenSea for 2 days and then I'm like, oh shit, like just like the project I invested in is like, you know, I think that's like the best part. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and we have basically we're basically running out of time. This time has passed by really fast because it's been a very enjoyable conversation between everyone. So 2 more questions left. One of them is for Jeremy. And basically your system, what you're building right now is certainly very attractive for creators, for fashion designers like yourself. How do you think you and alongside many other designers can convince the big corporations like Nike and Adidas to adopt your solution to this problem? Right?
The questions are like, that's like a super good question. We're not, you know, like I'm a designer who worked for these brands. And like, for me, it's more interesting to like build on tools that like will be creator owned and designer owned. And I think it's like that type of like any designer who kind of like understands and sees the value return will be building, will like make a decision. And I think it's going to take like obviously like some time, but I'm like the living example. Like sure, like I'm still keeping some like Web2 contracts because like I like to do like footwear or eyewear, you know, which are things like I can't really do using like Web3 right now. But you know, you give someone ownership or not. You know, you give someone like return on value or not. And the thing that's really interesting is like the best designers often are the ones that like never really get like the proper return of value. So like if the best designers are all using these tools, it's like either the brands are just gonna like exist in their own world and like this new like culture is gonna be created completely separately. Both can exist in parallel, or they're gonna have to make some adjustments. Like it is kind of like weird for me to see like Adidas sell like I think their like basic NFT is like $1,500. No, it's more than that. It's like 4K, you know. But like who worked on these NFTs? Like who are the designers that like 3D animated this NFTs? Like if the volume is like 1,000 ETH, you know, which is like $500,000, like is that person making like 100K a year? You know, like this is kind of like once people realize it, then it's easy to kind of like make the decision. So I think it's gonna be interesting, but like I'm really not trying to convince any brand. Actually, like one of the giant sportswear brand we're consulting with on like how we would suggest they approach like Web3 and we're telling them about like community first.
And what's kind of their reaction to that?
They're open about it, super open about it. Like obviously like I have some history with them, but they have a really, really strong community in like deep cut forums already that have been like, they've gotten a lot of intel from. So that's kind of like what we're proposing, but that's also like just research. They might have some like regulatory or some things that like, since they're not a DAO, you know, like they have to abide to certain rules. So yeah, I don't know, but also like, I really don't care.
Yeah, I think you're bringing a very interesting new narrative to the design space. Because I feel like in traditional luxury brands, the best products, the best brands are not necessarily associated with the best design, but it has a lot of pedigree embedded, right? It has a lot of control and pedigree that people buy a Gucci handbag, not because they know the designer or they love the design, but it's Gucci.
Don't you think that's shifting a little bit right now? Like if you think in the past 5 years, the designer, their art director is almost more important than the brand, you know, like, and you can speak to like, Virgil, Michele, and like the changes that they bring to a brand. Like imagine having these tools or like these brands being more like open, like you can follow a designer more easily, you know? So I think it's kind of like, it's speaking a little bit of the times, but yeah, I mean, anything can happen. It's just super interesting to have all these shifts. And again, it's like, I'm trying never to think in a hierarchical way of like, if there's a new system and like, maybe there's less users, but it's working for everybody, I'm gonna be right there.
And the very last question is, you know, we're at a university, we have a lot of college students in the audience, and college students are looking for work, are always looking for potential opportunities to join a company as an intern or as a full-time employee. So are there any opportunities for the stuff that you're working on right now that need some of the help from talented USC students?
The DM on Twitter. Like,
That's the alpha. I would say follow all three of us on Twitter.
yeah, DM us and like, we'll find things.
You'll find the work if you follow us.
Yeah,
I think that's really
100%.
what it is, because we basically never stop talking about it.
I try to stop talking about it because like I spill too much alpha, but yeah.
And then one thing I'd say, because I spent a lot of my career kind of not going the wrong direction, but just a different direction. And I think I've learned some things from it. And one of the things was, which I think is so exciting about Web 2 or Web 3 relative to Web 2 and the kind of the traditional hierarchical world is I spent a lot of my career trying to climb the ladder at Capital Group, which is a big corporation, multi-trillion dollars under management that's a couple miles away in downtown and deep connections to USC. And I got my CFA and all these things that I don't know if you guys are in business or stuff, it's like all these like badges of what employers might think are important. And I get people that come to me now in Web3, and frankly, I was unfulfilling and it didn't feel good because I was prestige chasing basically. And I was trying to accumulate like Boy Scout badges or Girl Scout badges, whatever you want to call them, but like badges to make me look important. Like in my this is a perfect way to put it. Yeah, like POAPs, exactly. What is a degree but a POAP? And so like, think about it. I would be, sorry, I'm really passionate about this thing, but I would be on Zooms with people in TradFi that would have like their degrees on their background. Like they went to Harvard in the back. I'm like, dude, you're 55. Like nobody gives a fuck if you went to Harvard anymore. Like, but the
undergrad.
Yeah, exactly. But it was 35 years ago. But the point is, it was a signaling mechanism, right? Of course, there's pride in where you go. You guys will always have pride on USC. USC is a phenomenal school, great alumni community, fight on. I get all that, and you should. You should have all that. Don't get me wrong. But the idea that like that is a signaling mechanism, you being smart at your age, like doesn't really work that way. In Web3, like I don't care where you went to school. Nobody does.
Yeah.
It's show me what you've written about a protocol.
Yeah,
what are you excited about? Like, and like I've seen people in college write stuff about protocols or do research work or do white papers and stuff that are so fascinating. I'm like, that's your resume right there. Just one article can be your whole resume. And that I think is super exciting. So be interested if you're passionate about something, create something, get something down on paper, make a piece of art, do an NFT. If you come to Consensys and say, hey, I did an NFT launch and this and that, and let's say it fell on its face and I didn't make any money and maybe I actually lost a bunch of time from it, like that is super cool. That is like, that's your resume. So don't worry about badge chasing
get
for
that.
CCs. Don't make my mistakes. Yeah.
No, but I agree. And I would even say like you pointed on something that like, it's like instead of even like finding work, just build something from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, and like do C Club or Gitcoin round, like there's capital to support interesting new projects.
We're partnered with, Dora Hacks, which is a, bounty platform for projects to, get votes and get money. They connect projects, student founders with Polygon and, obviously, 2 grants, there's a lot of money given out to, people that are interested in the space and building cool shit.
If you guys get on flip, I mean, to get really specific, if you really are scared about getting a job and like all that stuff, like get your Dune game going with SQL queries, get your flip side game going with SQL queries. I mean, obviously, if you can get there to learn Solidity, but if you can just start querying database, like the blockchain's a really messy system, it's really hard to query data. If you can start to learn how to query data on the blockchain, and I'm telling you, you can learn Dune in probably 2 weeks with good SQL queries and do graphs there, like, boom, DM me it. We'll hire you.
The Graph does a really good job on
Graph too, Graph is a great one. There's so many ones out there, and they have such good tutorials too, and it's free. You don't have to pay. Remember they do that math thing in university. You've all heard this. If you miss your class, it's like $200
And
charge.
even like, in like crypto voxels, the metaverse, right? Like you can build cool shit and there's like a lot of bounties on the Uwork. There's this really cool DAO called Metaverse Advertisement DAO. They're giving out bounties like $1,000, $2,000 bounties to just for you to build cool shit. Like it's almost like you like play Minecraft for 8 hours and get paid $2,000. Like why not?
So we're here to help. I would just say like, message us.
Yeah.
We're happy to chat. We're here,
Yeah.
And thanks for listening to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to say something. If you're like an artist, like a photographer, just like mint your work on chain. That's all I say. Just do it. Like find something and just do it.
Thank you everyone for coming. Yeah. And we'll have more of these speakers events coming as well. So join our Discord.
Yeah, we'll send you guys.
Yeah, join Discord.
This is dope.